Little Annie Rooney is fabulous. This is generally quite a light film, but there is one scene, and I won't spoil it, but there is one scene that's really quite heavy and powerful, and I want to praise it. So at the very end of this discussion, I will give a spoiler warning and just talk a little bit about that scene, because I don't think I could discuss this without really praising that scene in a bit of detail, but I'll mention that at the end. This film was released in 1925. It's directed by William Beaudine, written by Mary Pickford, Hope Loring and Louis Lighton, with a cast including Mary Pickford, William Haines, Walter James, Gordon Griffin and various others. And I'm quite new into my Mary Pickford journey. I've seen a few of her films to date and I am loving what I've seen, and this is no exception. Interestingly, she plays a young girl. Mary Pickford was in her 30s at this point, but it works. It really works. She passes as a young girl, and she is a very feisty character. She's referred to as a wildcat in the film, which I think is a perfect description. Annie is always fighting with boys and getting into scrapes, and it's all about her adventures. But as I said, things do also get quite heavy at one point, which I'll expand on at the end. It is otherwise quite a light film, but with some interesting commentary on fighting and that kind of behaviour, and I think it definitely has a lot to offer. As a silent film, I'd say it's very easy to follow. The intertitles are brilliant. They're not so frequent that you're constantly having to read them, but they're frequent enough that it's easy to keep up with what's happening, and most of the action on screen is pretty self-explanatory anyway. Visually, it looks really good with great camera work, really brilliant locations. We have some great performances, of course, and in time it becomes a much more moving, powerful film, but for the most part it is quite light and entertaining in that way, and I don't have any complaints at all. I really thoroughly enjoyed this one, and for me, a mark of a good silent film, or a good film in any way, is that I would love to see somebody do the same film today. I'd love to see how they'd put a contemporary spin on it, because I loved the narrative, I loved the characters. I'd love to see what it would be like if somebody were to make this 100 years later, and that's exactly how I felt. I really wanted to see other interpretations of Little Annie Rooney. I really wanted to see the character. Obviously, I love Mary Pickford in this, but I'd love to see somebody's more contemporary interpretation of this. So that's just my casual request, that if anybody is able to remake this or interpret this in their own way, I'd love to see it. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. I have no complaints. Definitely one that I think is worth watching. Big spoiler now, I will mention the heartbreaking moment. I say it's a big spoiler. Somewhere on the internet did give this away. I can't remember whether it was Letterboxd or IMDb, but something told me very briefly that this happened before I watched it. So I knew it was coming, even though it happens much later on in the film. So my advice there is that don't pay attention to what the descriptions online say if you're going to watch this, because it will spoil this moment. But I'm now, of course, going to spoil it. So, big spoiler. What happens basically towards the end of the film is Little Annie Rooney is setting up the kitchen table. There is a cake, there are candles, there's a note on the door saying that her papa has to knock before coming in, and an officer arrives at the door and he reads the note. He maybe lingers for a bit too long. I feel like they could have cut that down by a few seconds, but eventually he walks in the house, because we know what information he's about to share with Little Annie Rooney, and the decision they made here made it all the more heartbreaking, because Little Annie Rooney doesn't see this strange officer immediately. She's hiding under the table, under a tablecloth, to surprise her father. So she sees the police officer's boots, assuming it's her father, just prolonging this agony, and it's so effective. And of course, her father, apparent father, doesn't say anything. She looks at the tablecloth to find out what's happening, and she becomes confused. Brilliant facial expressions from Mary Pickford. And the officer ultimately has to tell her that her father, an officer, was killed in a fight. And I hate it. I love it because of how powerful it is, but I hate it. And I think I've seen a decent amount of silent films. I've got a lot more to watch, but for me, I'd say it is one of the most powerful scenes in any silent film that I have ever seen. They could have just had her sitting in a chair. The officer could have knocked on the door. She could have answered it. But to have the note on the door, to have the candle lit with the cake lit with the candles, and to have him then stand there and prolong that agony. It was just so. This one scene, as I said, I don't usually give spoilers in my discussions, but I could not talk about this film without paying some attention to this scene. I hate it, and I like it. It's very difficult. It's yeah, they did an amazing job with it. Really, really, really amazing. And the officer had tears in his eyes. It was, yeah. Maybe I don't want the film to be remade because I don't want to sit through that again. Really brilliant, though. It really shifted the tone of the film, and it made it all the more moving and meaningful, and provided a much deeper, darker commentary about fighting and violence and what that can lead to. So, yeah, Little Annie Rooney is a fabulous film. I'm going to say I wouldn't mind watching it again, but that scene, yeah, I hate it. I love it and I hate it. Brilliant film, though. Mary Pickford is fabulous. No complaints from me. Definitely one that's worth watching.